I will say good evening, and I will sit here. I don't know what they're trying to say by putting me to sit, but there will be times that I'll get up and do what I have to do. I asked Dr. Jeffries to give me a hand when it's time to stop so that we could have a question-answer period. I was told that I may make my presentation on any subject area that I desire, and so I will make it tonight a little in an area that you have never heard me on, I know. It is the Nubian origin of Egypt. Most people speak about Egypt as if Egypt was the first civilization or society in Egypt or in Africa, and that couldn't be more false than saying that a rabbit is a pigeon. Egypt is one of the last of the ancient cultures, if not the last along the Nile. What made Egypt so important is not that it led any African society in antiquity, but that it is the society in where most of the artifacts have remained, because it was the first of the African society and the societies of the entire world to, to place their recordings in stone. That's the uniqueness of Egypt in difference to other African societies along the Nile. We cannot place Egypt before the civilian period, civilian first, second, and third, in terms of records, whereas you can place the societies of Africa at the headwaters of the Nile: Ethiopia, Uganda, Somalia, even Kenya and Tanganyika. We go back to an Egyptian himself, and a very early Egyptian going back in the second and third dynasty, who said, we came, we meaning the Egyptians, from the beginning of the Nile, where God happy dwells, at the foothills of the mountain of the moon. As a matter of fact, Nubia was Egypt before Egypt became Nubia. I hope that isn't confusing. It wasn't meant to be confusing, though it is. What I'm saying to you before, the term Egypt, in whatever language or words you want to describe it, if you're going to use Kemet, or you're going to use Tameri, or Sais, or Pearl of the Nile, either word you use, it does not come before Ta-Nehisi. Ta-Nehisi, as a Nubian state, predated that of Egypt. Ta-Nehisi was pre-dynastic. Why don't we have Ta-Nehisi then, or Nubia, highlighted in this school or any other school, or by most African Africanists, and of course other people dealing with Africa, is because of what the Greeks did, and we still cannot get away from our Greek navel string. Let us go back to antiquity, to history. The point of the emphasis of Egypt is dynastic. The point of the emphasis of dating Egypt's antiquity is based upon artifacts from the time of the Greeks until the present time, although the Greeks were not anywhere in society before 1000 BC. What our education have given us in these institutions, including the so-called black institutions, is a Greco-Romano and other European type of African background. And it is that I wish to deal with this evening It is that which I am working at the present time in my field diggings, my archaeological team, not to prove, because it doesn't need any kind of proof. The facts are there. If we should look at the facts, my reason for coming down the Nile, instead of going up the Nile like most people come to Cairo, they fly into Cairo and then they start in Cairo, going up to Aswan. I start in Aswan and go down to Cairo. One time we even went down to Alexandria for what I do not know. But nevertheless, it must be now emphasized that Nubia is the mother of Egypt, just as Ethiopia is the mother of Nubia, and just as Somalia, Kenya, Uganda is the grandmother of Egypt. If we are to look, no society in human history starts at the end of a river and work up against the current of that river. Because the means by which men would travel up the river had to be locomotion. There was no sailboat for man to use when he first started to navigate the river. He started with logs, solid logs of tree that he realized floated. He then started to tie logs together to give more buoyancy for those of you in engineering. And then man started to hollow out logs in order that he may take much more weight. And that was the beginning of man's transportation along the river. He traveled on the river before he traveled on the wheels. He traveled on the river before he started traveling on the backs of other animals besides himself. And we must go back to these in order to understand. We must go back to the paintings of the Grimaldis, the paintings of other small African people, namely the Hutu, and also the Kalahari, the Khoikhoi, and other Africans, especially those that went into Egypt, namely the Sebenetos. I don't have time to talk and to spell these names because I've spoken to you a number of times, and by now you should be able to spell those words. It was not until as late as the 1500 that Egypt, the same Egypt that we are talking about, became extended to what is now called Aswan, Aswan or Senusset, or Senot, as it was called. It was 1500 before the Common Era that Egypt took over Nubia from a place now still called Asyut, deep into the southern part of Egypt was the northernmost part of Sudan, or Aswan, or Nubia. Go back again. If you are accustomed to Egypt and you are in Luxor, you must travel north. That means going down the Nile to at least 200 miles north to come to Asyut. You draw a horizontal line parallel to the equator and run it across Egypt, and that's where Nubia, up until 1500, which will bring us into the 18th dynasty, that was still Nubia. So when you're speaking about Nubia, you are speaking about the creation of dynastic Egypt. And again, that's what we have overlooked in our Greek mythology, in our Greek training, in our European education. The 18th dynasty, or 1500 and thereabout, bring us at a period of time when we are speaking about the Inhoteps, That would include Akhenaten. It brings us before the very noted, and in my case, the most noted of the Egyptian pharaohs in terms of what they contributed to society, which will be Ramesses II, and all that happened subsequent to that. However, what is overlooked is the role that Nubia played even in dynastic Egypt. We know of Nubia, and we deal with Nubia in terms of one particular person, and that would be the wife of Ramesses II, Nefertari II, because we then generally don't speak of Nefertari in terms of second. She is the second. There was a previous Nefertari which we will speak about later. Nubia not only gave to Egypt Nefertari II or Nefertari first, but Nubia passed on her culture to Egypt. We think of Nubia in terms of the Nubian dynasty, 24th, 25th, depends on whose chronology you're using, and that would be a point when Egypt was already start to decay. Egypt was already in her dying days when we are talking about the point when the dynasties were controlled under Nubian tutelage. I am talking about Nubian dynastic influence from the time of Aha, A-H-A, and the time of another man who was confused with Aha, namely Narmer. The Greeks were the ones who decided that Narmer was the first of the pharaohs, call him Mena, as well as they call him later Menes. But in fact, it was Aha who really started. There were 3 Ahas, and only 2 are recorded in Egyptian history. One of the Aha is said to be the first priest of ancient Egypt. This Aha was the one that introduced the Nubian god to Egypt. But that Nubian god has been carefully suppressed. We are talking about Mendelusi. Mendelusi is said by certain Western historians to be the brother of Osiris. In other writings, he is said to be the son of Osiris and brother of Horus. But in Nubian mythology, if you want to call it that, in Nubian religiosity, Mendelusi is the equal brother of Osiris and the senior brother of Osiris. Why isn't Mendelusi mentioned? When we go to the temple of what is called Kalabsha, that's a German terminology, Kalabsha. That temple was Kolo Boyo. Kolo Boyo Temple. K-O-L-O, one word, B-O-Y-O, Kolo Boyo Temple. You will notice that when you go to that temple, there are stones belonging to the previous temple that was there. There are animals of ancient Africa and the Nile in particular shown on those stones that you find nowhere else. And then you recognize that there was a temple there hundreds of years, thousands of years that predated the temple that was built much later, equally by Nubian people. Stop and consider who worked the quarries of Nubia. There is not another place in all of Egypt where one can find marble other than Aswan. No place else. And no one can show that any marble was brought from a foreign state, whether a foreign state in Africa or a foreign state in Asia. We do not need to speak about Europe because Europe is not in history yet. Then why is it that African scholars have failed to deal with Nubia? The answer is obvious. Because we have failed to deal with our color. And we're still scared to deal with our color. I'll give you an example of this. African scholars, and I use the term with quotation marks. African scholars come to Harlem and they say, Dr. Ben is this, Dr. Ben is that, he introduced us to this, he introduced us to that. Look at their writings. See if you see Dr. Ben's name even mentioned in a negative way. They come after come and they go after go, and they tell you how great Dr. Ben is. And Dr. Ben is still laughing inside. I don't laugh in the face because it's rude, I said. But then you take up the latest work and see if in their latest work, I'm not talking about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in the latest work, they quote everybody that Dr. Ben introduced, even the white ones. The present star in academia that they quote, Bonnell, was a fellow that came and sneak in my classes at Cornell up to the last day when Cornell getting rid of me. They came to find the last piece of information. Today, Bonnell is a superstar, yet he quote me all over the place. You know, I am known to be blunt. Take up the last book of, what is it, Africa Revisited, or somebody revisited, and see if you see any of those scholars, any one of them, quoting Ben Jochannan. You name it, and he or she or he and she found it necessary to quote James, who I introduced, and others, but never Ben Jochannan. Why? Because Ben Jochannan dare equally to say, among other things, that the civilization of Egypt is a black civilization, and say it without a benefit of doubt, and deal with the rape of Africa in terms of the Greeks of yesterday, the Greeks of today, and all other Europeans combined. And why do I say this? And why can't they say this? Because all of them, I can't say bar none, refuse to do the most essential thing. Get out of the library, get out of the museum, and go to the field. Take off your three-piece suit and the tie. You can use it. I use three-piece suit. This is my camouflage garment, my gig, as the brothers say. But you have to go to the field to deal with that original work yourself. If you want to be a mother, you can't be a physician dealing with mothers. You got to be a mother. Get pregnant, then you know what it is. You could be a faggot, that don't make you no mother. You could sympathize, but you will never know what it is to be a mother. You will never know what Egypt is unless you go and do that original spade work. How could I tell that Nubia is the mother of Egypt? Before I started my latest digging a year and a half ago, every time I dug a spade, and it's not me alone, there's 6 other brothers, 6 Nubian brothers with me, but every time we bring up a shovel, I am not looking for the major find, I am looking for the tiniest bit of relic to put me back with the ancient brothers and sisters. But it's not only that. I go back to the ancient people, the ancient modern people, if you want to call them that, those Egyptians, those Nubians who cannot even speak today Arab. You'll be surprised to know that Arabic, that there are thousands of Nubians who do not speak Arabic in Egypt. And they do not speak it not because they can't learn it, out of contempt for the conquerors. Some people ask, "Don't you speak Arabic? You going to Egypt so long?" I am not interested in Arabic. I'm not interested in English. I'm not interested in French. I'm not interested in any colonial language, so that if I don't speak or speak it out of its proper grammar or whatnot. I don't give a damn. I don't speak it because I hate the damn thing and the people that it belongs to. That's why I don't identify myself as English, French, Dutch, or anything like that. Now, in going back, then, these are the basics in which to understand the material that one uses, one must have the frame of mind. One must place oneself in that of the actor, so to speak. One must become Ramesses to understand Ramesses. And one must become Nefertari to understand her. Let us go and see one of the points in which I knew that Egypt was the child of Nubia. The most essential sacred drama in all of Egypt was the Opet Festival, the O-P-E-T festival. And the Opet Festival came out of another festival, the festival of the love, the romantic prowess of the mother queen of all of Egypt. And I'm speaking about the goddess. Not the goddess that you know commonly and most shown over the heads of the pharaohs when they die, and yet she goes back way time. I am speaking about the goddess, the woman who was involved with the first trinity of the entire world community and the Nile Valley in particular. I am talking about Khonsu's mother. Khonsu is called various names, and I'm using the name that you're most familiar with. I am talking about goddess Mut, not goddess Nut. They're two different ones, M-U-T and N-U-T. Why is it that all the writings there's an emphasis on goddess Nut, but no emphasis on goddess Mut? Because it's clearly stated that goddess Mut is a southern goddess. Southern means Upper Nile. We must look back and say, was goddess Nut worshipped south of Egypt? Not at all. The ancient Nubians and Ethiopians, on the other hand, worshipped goddess Mut. Anywhere you go, to the beginning of the Nile, there are folklore about goddess Mut in Uganda up to today. As a matter of fact, there is folklore about goddess Mut in Nigeria today, coming to Nigeria by way of the Yoruba religion. There is mention of goddess Mut in all the way in Haiti, in Dambalawedo. Dambalawedo is a transition of the religion that comes to the Yoruba ceremonies. There is mention of goddess Mut in Maniquismo, in Cuba, and even in Puerto Rico, where we are talking about Santerismo, there's a mention of goddess Mut. So what has happened is that all over the continent there are influences about goddess Mut. And we cannot avoid it. We see the symbol of goddess Mut as far south as what was called Munomotapa, before the Europeans tell us we shouldn't call our own country Munomotapa. It is a bad word. And then we turn from that and call it now Namibia and the other name, Azania. I still say Munomotapa. Now, what we have to do in this case, and I know this lecture may sound rather strange to a lot of you, but I passed a certain stage now. It's introduced, take it, go with it. Now there's other stages you've got to deal with. In other words, we're past first grade, second grade, we now past kindergarten, we're now in junior high school, we passed college, you got the doctorate, now let's go to the postdoctoral lessons. See, let us go to the one that you can't get in the classroom at all. You must come to the field. to deal with this. Let us go to the one where we're talking about upon which the foundation, the spirituality of ancient Egypt rests. We are talking now about the mystery system. And we have taken up Professor James's work, beautiful work at that. I wish Richard Moore was alive and a few other people for us to deal with it. I wish Professor Seifert was around for us to really deal with how those thoughts were placed into order in the various works of Professor James before he wrote Stolen Legacy. The 8 papers which Professor James published that led up to Stolen Legacy. What it is that brought about the ancient Egyptian philosophy of God, the concept of God? What is it that brought the ancient Egyptian concept of theology to explain the theosophy? Was it an experience from a supernatural being coming from outer space, as most of us tend to believe it, a hocus pocus? Was it some god that fly over some part of Egypt and said, come here, and got up on top of some hill and passed down a tablet or something? Was it any of that? No, none whatsoever. It was science. The ancient African used science as the foundation for religion. And I guess I should remove the word religion from that. As found in the documents, the ancient Africans in their writings dealt with the first concept of God. The first concept, the universe and all there is in it. All explanation of the totality. This is the reason we start to talk about the universe in terms of a circle. But the ancient Africans placed at the center that thing upon which the universe, that became this circle, the universe, was that which contains everything. And the ancient Africans said that within this circle, there are 4 quadrants. They didn't use the word quadrant, that's the English word, of course. But in the center of these 4 quadrants in this circle, there is a centroid axis. And the Africans, the ancient Africans, projected this. And from that projection, and if you carry that to its extent, you will come back again. This projection will be equal to that projection. But if you take this, let's take this, or take this, and we have this. Let's move this up, and we have that. Let's separate them. It's one pyramid and another pyramid. The angle doesn't change. It is out of this, I'm sorry, and the projections of this that the ancient, but did this come from Egypt? Not at all. We see this in southern Africa among the Grimaldis. Go to the museum in the New York Museum of Anthropology down there at 70 and Central Park West, and you see the Grimaldi doing this. But what is the difference? You still have the point of it. This intersecting point, that intersection point, that intersection is still going to give you, the 4 quadrant is still going to give you the pyramidal sign. But did we break this down? It is here that the original concept came, that God is the center of the universe. And God, as the angel was Ra. R-A. Why R-A? Translate R-A into English. R will be O, R, the radiance. God sees and commands all that God sees. And that's what the Greeks are calling the mysteries. But the ancient Africans equally went further and said what? A, B, and C. And out of that developed A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And all other types of algebraic calculation. And that was the mystery. When the Greeks came to Egypt, as a matter of fact, before they even came, when they were on the island of Samoa, when they were learning from the ancient Africans in lodges established by the ancient Africans, they could not understand this to be logical thing. If you drop a plumb back from here, we saw the God here, I would always see Tahuti, the God of measurement and the God of recording every event. There was nothing superfluous to him. There was nothing extraordinary to them. The ancient Africans were so acquainted with their tradition, acquainted what was the ordinary day of life for the common priest. Mathematics was not surprising to them. They had mastered mathematics. And because they master mathematics, they master religion. They master the concept of the human feelings against it. Thus, the ancient Africans, when they did this, they equally introduced something which the Europeans cannot conceive up to now. They show you the feather of truth, justice. Ma'at, as it's called today. Ma'at, an Ethiopian ostrich feather, against symbolically the heart soul. The heart soul. And they put an eye here, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, dealing with the heart. The ancient Greeks couldn't deal with this, and therefore they eventually put the symbols of existence, an arrow. They had to have violence going through that heart, just as they have violence in terms of our love making. Even the lullabies up to now that the present Europeans sing, Rockabye Baby, on the treetop. When the treetop baby, the baby gonna drop and break into two. And Humpty Dumpty on a wall, get a damn fall and bust up. You know, even the little rhymes for the little children gonna wind up into, murder or something. So they couldn't think of this kind of thing. The ancient Africans, it is from this the ancient Africans used to conceive the possibility of God. The translation out of this came another aspect that the Africans see. Now we have the circular shape here, we have the circular shape here. And what we're talking, the ancient Africans started to devise methods by finding these chords. What did they mean? Out of this, the Africans did more. He reversed this and did this. He's finding the strength of things around him. Most of you young men are in engineering. It's not only for making a dollar, so you could buy a BMG or a G or D or something like that. These are spiritual dimensions. The ancient Africans did these. The moment factors here. To your maximum moment in here. The moment. Listen to it. The moment that you reach the point of resistance and it gives the fluidity of it, you're going to have a bending, right? Those of you in engineering. If you pass the moment factor and pass the center of this, you go in to a sharing factor. The moment it was a snap. You have that in religion. Religion was a scientific calculation by the ancient Egyptians. Excuse me for those of you who don't deal with strength of material and so forth that you may not understand, but you're supposed to understand it. What do you mean you don't understand it? You're an African, you're supposed to understand it. If we were taught as Africans, as our ancestors were teaching in the school, every one of you would have understood it because you would have been taught this. You would not have been taught only for its engineering characteristic to make a dollar to buy you some personal wealth. You would have been taught this to understand the spirituality that is involved with this. And this is the aspect that we have forgotten. We have forgotten this because the ancient Africans using the same thing said that represented the law of opposites. Huh? Law of opposites. Well, this is that, but this is that, but this is that, but this is everything you go. Anytime you move from the center point, there is an opposite. You can carry that center point any place. There is an opposite. Anywhere you move it, it is something you said that you translated and say, in order to come, you cannot come out of this force field, right? If you move from here, from the center to there, in order to stay within the force field, this, although the distance from here to here is greater than the distance from here to here, the force here must be equal to the force there in order to stay in equilibrium. If you lie today, tomorrow you pay. And tomorrow is not necessary you lie on the 6th of December and you're going to pay on the 7th. You may pay on the 19th, 10,000 years later. The Europeans trying to adopt this concept could not deal with it in its Africanicity, thus deal with it that your children will suffer unto the 7th generation for wrongdoings of yourself. Now, you see why we can't find Nubia? We can't see Nubia because where did this start? We've got this. Excuse the projection being off a little. We got this. So we got where Africa and Asia meets. But we also have this. Okay. We're talking about the Nile. We're talking here about this is the Red Sea, by the way. Let's deal with it. And this is the Great Sea, or the Sea of Sighs. And this is the Ethiopian Ocean. It has been changed to the North Atlantic, to the South, and the South Atlantic. This has been changed to the Mediterranean. We're talking about a time when there was no European known to be doing anything. It doesn't mean that they weren't around, but they were messing with ice. They had no... They didn't even have the idea of making fire to keep them warm. You understand? They are talking about the time when the Europeans used to kill, out of every 5 girls, they killed 3. because it cost too much to keep a woman alive. So they went to not polygamy, which they condemned, but they went to no. The opposite of polygamy, monogamy. Actually, the third factor, polyandry. I mean, you're all going to college. Polyandry, where one woman have 5 or 2 or more husbands. The opposite of polygamy, monogamy. Now, they had to do that because they had no food. When you don't have food, you can't be restful. You have to be restless. You got to be always thinking and getting up, getting as little sleep as possible to get out there to catch the next fish coming up in the hole, when you dig the little hole. The Africans here had no holes to dig. There were fish all over the place. Didn't need to dig any holes. The vegetation all over the place. So you had time to sit down and to watch the universe. He had time to be here and figure what it would be here. And time to figure here. Thus he understand. He knew by this. He also knew. This is religion. He also knew that at point A, B, C, and C, he looked. He had time to observe. And he knew that it would take 28 days to go here. And then he knows it will take 28 days to go here. 28, and he said the object that he saw here, call this moon, call it any other thing that he wanted. And he knew. That's why he knew. There was no damn nonsense the Africans thought about any wall being flat. The African knew the wall was not flat because they had already figured the wall out to the point to give us a calendar called the stellar calendar. A calendar based upon the stars that he had seen looking here, he saw there. He then conceived that here was the beginning of the world at a place called Giza, centroid of the 16 pyramids that were there. And thus, this nonsense about the African using the pyramid for a water pump. I mean, you know, that came because nobody who wrote that went to the field. You could not have gone to the field in the pyramids and come up with such a thing. You first write it, then you come to the place, look at it and say, yes, I agree, it's so. You got to come and see it. Because if I drop a perpendicular here, you see, if I drop a perpendicular there, it is this same line. If I drop a perpendicular here, if I drop one from here, you see what's happening all the time? It is going to be the same series, it is going to be the same. So the African knew that when he stood at this position, and that's why I know that Nubia was the mother. Because when I go to the temple at Sinot, and the island, the tip of the island is Elephantine, what it's called Elephantine these days, it's Sinot. And I dig and find how the Nubians, when I look at Sinot, the temple of Sinot, most of the temples are rectangular. Most of the temples have their Holy of Holies. Let's do this. Most of the temples have their Holy of Holies here. The temple of Sinot, the Holy of Holies, face here. Face south. From where the source came. Let's take the Nile. This is north, This is south, this is east, and this is west. Huh? Why did they put their temple face south? Let us go to another major temple. Let us go to the temple of the great northern temple, which is now called Karnak, which was called Warit. Where Warit? Here we are. Here is the symbolic. I'm going to put Cairo here, but it doesn't belong here. Cairo doesn't come until the 12th century of the Common Era, when Saladin, the Arab, established a little city called Fustat, F-U-S-T-A-T, which is today called Cairo. As a matter of fact, there's an old part still called Fustat by anybody who knows the history. But let's take Fustat over here, or Cairo. And I only use it for references, it's not an ancient city. Well, we put Fustat there. So therefore we know this is at the west side. It is here, over here, that the pyramid field is, and the West Bank. Whether it is the Giza pyramid field, Asubir, Absor, any of the pyramid fields, Saqqara, any of them, they're over there. Let us take now the great temple of, here is the Nile, here is the east, the east side of the Nile. The west side of the Nile is the burial grounds. We are talking now about the Valley of the Kings, etc. Over here, a little way in from the Nile, the Luxor temple is closer to the Nile, but the Luxor temple, which is the Waset temple, later called Thebes, presently called Luxor. This temple that we're talking about runs in the direction of the Nile? No, it runs this way. The temple of Waset, Karnak or Warit. And the temple has, this temple has right here, its Holy of Holies and its altar to the west, contrary to the later temples. Why? The temple in the great temple of Ramesses II is here, looking this way. But the temple of Ramesses II, looking this way, the Holy of Holies is here, looking to the north. As we enter the gate to this temple, the temple, within the temple now, we're talking of temples, for those of you who have been there, temples within a temple. The temple of Amun, the husband of Mut. We go on again. Amun, God Amun, the wife is Mut. The temple of Amun is here, runs this way. Where is the Holy of Holies? Here, south. And where did God Amun came from? South. Ra and Amun both came from the south. Why would the ancient of Egypt take their gods from the south? Why is it that their mythology speak of the first king that rose to the rank of Pharaoh, head of the great house, Pharaoh, was from the south? The south is Luxor. We just said it, Luxor, using today's name. That is where Naaman and Aha, all of the ancient, the earliest pharaohs came from the south. The most important pharaohs came from the south. The Amenhotep family did not move their residence until the son, Akhenaten, Amenhotep III, moved the residence to north. But why didn't Akhenaten maintain? What did Akhenaten do to change the whole concept, trying to get away from Amun? He moved the concept. Yes, he did the right thing. He introduced the concept, reintroduced the concept of Amun-Ra. Before it would become Amun-Ra, it is Amun-Ra. In the north, it was changed to what? Amen-Ra. Amun-Ra had become Amen. And after Amen-Ra, after Scorpion, the king Scorpion was defeated by the king Nama, also called Mena. The Greek came later and called him Menes. It is then it became Amen-Ra. But we must understand all of this. How in the world you're going to deal with it if you don't understand it? How can you deal with religion? How can you deal with Jesus Christ and Allah and Jehovah, and you don't know where these people pick up from? Huh? How can you deal with Allah, with Jehovah, and you don't have a Jew, one Jew at all, until Abraham arrived? Abraham, and you can't deal with him until at best 1675 before the Common Era. You can't deal with Jesus Christ until Pontius and Botius in Pontius and Botius until at least what is called 25 or so. He started it, so let's call it one of the Common Era. And you can't deal with Allah until you got Muhammad. Muhammad, and I'm going to speak to write it. This is the only way you're supposed. You can't write Allah Muhammad for nobody else but this way. And you can't deal with him until 622 of the Christian era or Common Era, equivalent to one of AH after the Hijrah. If you cannot relate these factors together, then if we're dealing with these, just let us deal with modern Egypt. Egypt has already gone a number of dynasties, a number of years together. We go back to at least 4100 BC before the Common Era. And that is already when Egypt has made a major transition. The book of the coming forth by day and by night is already transferred, already translated, already changed. It's already edited. New editions came out. But we stop at the book of the dead. What we're talking about. And unless we're willing to deal with these things, unless we're willing to challenge the president of the college that we're in, the dean of the college, the dean of education, unless we're willing to challenge them, unless we're willing to challenge the Pope in Rome and the great rabbi in Israel, and who else in England and so forth, unless we're willing to challenge those suckers, we are not ready to deal with this. We've got to be ready. And that's why they can't quote me. They can't quote me writing what's going downtown. And they can't invite me to things where white folks are going to be. They can't invite me to things where good Negroes are going to be. Now you you got to be waiting because, you know, I can't finish the lecture without getting to this. If we're dealing with the center of the universe, here is the navel. An umbilical cord come through there. Are we going to have religion without the source of religion? Can you have religion without people? Can you? No. Can you have a God without people who say it's a God? Huh? How do you know there's a God? Somebody tell you there's a God. Right? If nobody, there's something they say, if the Africans say, if a log of wood, if a tree falls down in the forest, and there is no Africans in the forest, does the tree make a sound? Even if they make it, you don't know nobody here. So you need me and you to say what happened. You need me to say there's God. You need me to establish God. God hasn't established herself yet. If man is God, then man must start people. Man should lead. Right? Show me one faggot man that can be president. I like to see that's another reason why they can't invite me to conversations, because they don't know what I'm going to say. But the point is this. Why should I come up here speaking all kind of Greek words and things like that I can go to the dictionary to understand it before I come to here? But you know what I'm talking, right? Right? See, why should I go in the bar and start saying, fellows, this is imperative. But if and then a bunch of you start talking and I'm trying to explain. But if I go in the bar and say, shut up, motherfuckers, everybody's going to listen. Because the next thing may be my 38. Now I can come in you and tell you, would you please quiet? Yeah, because you have been conditioned, you know that you control. All I got to say is shut up, quiet. And you start. Your master teach you that. Now, your master equally taught you about Adam and Eve. But Adam and Eve don't fit in this equation. Eve and Adam fit in this equation. All right? Because no way. You see what they said? Goddess, Mut. They wrote it down. Goddess, Mut, and God, Amun. Right? Because everything you see, when you go to the, again I remind you, go to the Harlem Hospital, to the labor room, see how many men lying down. There are a lot of men lying down, they're shot and they pass out in the labor room. But the only thing you see in there giving birth is Sister African. She is giving birth. The brother in the same position, flat on the back. But he passed out. He ain't giving a damn thing. They're going to have to give him smelling salt. But the African did not look at birth. We're talking about his religiosity. We're talking about his spirituality. Thank you. Huh? The brother goes and took this and he created a goddess to explain to another brother. He took a brother called Min, shown with one hand alone, always up, one hand. Took the brother And this is the brother navel. He puts the brother penis here. Huh? Put men's penis here, a good long one. In a way you could go and see men and mistake men. Let us cut the brother, down center. Take a AA. Let's take a view of AA. AA through the brother. Let's cut a section through the brother AA. Okay? So we got projection of this section. We got the brother. Let's give him some. Don't want to mistake a white character. Okay. We got the brother. We got his back section here, and we stop here with his back bones, right? And we come around here because we know this is the soft tissue and whatnot, and we got his stomach here, and then we bring his chest down here. Okay? Now, we know we got the navel of the brother here. We know the normal gonads are here. You call it the balls. I don't want anybody to misunderstand. And the penis is normally here. But the African brother and his sister, because they were the priests and priestesses, in explaining life to us from a philosophical point, move the penis from here and put it here that we could see the penis here. An extension of the umbilical cord. But what is the umbilical cord? It is an extension of life. It is here that the baby is connected in the womb. Even when the baby comes down here, here's the pelvic here, and it comes out the labia minoria and the labia majora, and that's a bitch that they talk about, labia minora and labia majora. It comes out the lips of the vagina. Down the fallopian tube, down the lips of the vagina, talk what we can understand. Brother Jeff, am I going right the language of the people? And we come down here. This is our thing. If we were teaching each other the way we could understand, we wouldn't have so many brothers and crap. If the brother understood how the construction of his mama, the construction of himself, and what it was all about, the brother wouldn't be up, but the brother is lost. He don't even know his body. The sister is lost. She got a baby, and she can't tell you about how that baby got in there. She couldn't trace the course of the sperm coming out of this penis, going into the vagina. She couldn't trace it. No, she don't know what get into the heart of the baby. How the hell she gonna know to take care of the baby? She don't know how the baby got there because she doesn't understand that this having a relationship to her sexual intercourse. To her, sexual intercourse is making love. Last night we made love. How the hell are you gonna make love? Love is an emotional feeling that comes into your psyche, into your mind. That sister, I meet the sister, we talk, and I need to stop. The sister get into my mind and make my heart, she don't get in my heart, she get in my mind, but make my heart stumble. Start to do all kind of vibration. Huh? I can't think straight, I can't eat. You understand? The sister, but now I'm gonna, but if the sister do that, it got my body rocking, but it hasn't yet. As long as I keep my muss, as long as I could keep my mind, I'm still in balance. See, the love, the physical love, don't change the spiritual respect.
Thank you.
So I can't make love. I go out to the sister, take her to dinner one night, I want to screw the next minute. So baby, I took you, I bought that big lunch, it's $20. What are you going to do? $20 worth of lunch. Huh? And this, unless we could go back and understand this, I said, I know if you know what you're talking, when you have dealt with this and come, you are now a philosophy. I must see in your philosophy. You're a sociologist. I must see in your sociology. You're an architect. I must see in your architecture. This, then I say, you're an Egyptologist. You must understand it. You must come home and go and check why men, they have moved his penis to his umbilical cord. Because they are reminding men that is a compliment. Is the opposite of the same umbilical cord. The person who carries it, and that's the mother. The Europeans can't deal with the woman being the mother. So he's trying to find a way. He has created a plastic vagina. He's removed now. He's trying to make a way in which fertility could happen. He's not satisfied with the creation of nature. And so this bothers him. It bothers him to the point that if you turn your dial and you want to see a man selling ice, there's a naked woman. Huh? If a man selling a tractor, there's a naked woman. Black sisters even could sing. They got top singers, don't need to be exploited. And she in the video, naked, doing the funky dance and the rhyme. And she could sing, she don't need it. But she has to be exploited because she too is caught up with the European value of making love. Huh? You can't make love. You can have sex, sexual intercourse. Then you can have sex without physical contact. I'm not going to tell you that. Just keep on that. But I could have a sexual affair mentally with you. Like most Christian women go to church and get a man. Go to bed with Jesus all the time. When they pass out, what do you think they're doing when they're gone? I think I'll bring it down home now for the question and answer period. This is what I'm talking about. When you understand that this concept came down the Nile, going to Ethiopia and you see it transmitted from its ancient concept into the drawings as you go into Fort George, and you sit. Go into the churches in the wall at last. Take that same trip going down and you see in the temples of Ramesses II, and before we got there, go into the Lion Mountain in Sudan. Then you come down and you see the same thing repeated going down. These are the mothers and the fathers and the grandparents of ancient Egypt. And until we use that, until we understand even the cataract, the numbering, and I change the numbers around, then we will understand. If we understand these, then we cannot write in our books using the same distortions that the Europeans use. It is not enough to say, not enough to come in the room and say, Hotep, it's good, but it's not enough. It's not enough to say one word, can't say the next one that goes with it. It's not enough. It's not enough to wear African garments, but one along the street grabbing some white woman, hugging like this. You have to make a total transition When you talk about being African, your wife must be African. Your love must be African. You must be African, think African, feel African, love African. Everything. You must go through a complete transformation, just as the worm does when it becomes a butterfly. The worm changed to a butterfly, but its gene still, just comfort is still a part of a butterfly. So when you see the butterfly, you see no worm. When you see me, you see my mother and father, and their mothers and fathers to the nth degree. And it cannot change. Therefore, when I steal an apple, the integrity of my parents gone. And that's what it means. The sins of the child should pardon, and the sins of the parents should pardon the child in the 7th generation. The sins of the parents pardon to the child every generation. Not 7th generation, but it doesn't have the mythological thing that if a child gets burned with a pot of hot water, it is because my grandfather sinned. 7th generation go. That's poppycock. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a man comes in a restaurant and I'm sitting down and he's hungry. And I didn't give him some bread and I got $50, $100 in my pocket, and I see the brother's hungry, the damn thing goes running down his side of his mouth for hunger. Don't get the brother the money. Said, brother, sit down, what you want in the menu. If you can't do that, stop talking the damn jive about Egypt and all that kind of damn nonsense. You're a faker. If you run from the black community, can't live with black people, you're a faker. You must. You got to deal with us. You got to deal with us. And we have to deal with ourselves. And that's what I mean. We've got to go back up the Nile, then come down. And understand Egypt for what she is. She's a beauty. She's my child, she's my mother. She's my woman, she's my sister. But she didn't come first. Let's go back to the beginning of the Nile. Let's go back to those waterways, those lakes, and go back around there. Look at those small people. Look at us when they give us the ankh. When they give us other symbols to make what was Egypt. So let us go back to Egypt. When we say those black brothers and black sisters, and they don't come blacker. Just remember, the blacker the meat, the sweeter the gravy. And if we remember those things, and it doesn't say anything to us of the like, I got a like mother, doesn't make a less of a Nubian woman, but the standard of the African woman is the black meat. The standard of the European woman is the blonde meat. Doesn't belittle us, those of us who are brown, black, there's shades of that. But we must remember the standard. And the standard like that is the standard here. I thank you.
Dr. Ben, beautiful lecture. Outstanding lecture. About 9 years ago at Pratt University, Pratt College down in Brooklyn, he gave a similar talk. He talked, using the metaphor about stress. He talked about how a lawyer stresses his point, how an engineer deals with the stress point of a bridge, and things of that nature. And he said that the African identified that process and chose to call the stress factor God. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Thank you very much. Yes, what I did it in those times, and it's glad for you to remind me, and it couldn't be accepted. Brothers and sisters, after the lecture came and started to berate me about dealing God in terms of engineering, without understanding that when we talk about God, we're talking about an entirety. There is nothing that doesn't come under the aegis of the term God. But you see, the brother had, as some of us have, a thing which we call religion, or we want to use the, and then there's a thing, secular and religious. That which we do on Mondays, if we're Christian, all the way to Saturday is secular. And Sunday is separate, is religious. My point is that which I do every day, every minute, every millisecond is religious as well as secular. That you can't separate my religion or my religious activity from my secular activities. When I'm involved with telling a girl I'm in love with her, that is secular as religious. How can I take away my feelings? That's why we could lie easily. We could tell a woman we love and only looking for a lay, because then we have separated our religious activities from our secular activities. So then it's easy to leave her as soon as she gets pregnant, walk out and go out the door. Because we have said, I'm going to the door because with my secular self, since my religious self had not been involved with this girl. But if my secular and religious self kept me under stress, kept me unable to break away the two, then I can't leave my child. I could get mad with the mother, quit with the mother, break up, don't have no more relation sexually with the mother, but I can't leave my child. So that the mother become a part of my child as myself. So I've got a forever connection with her. I got the same connection that if I had sex with her, walk out and leave her, because all my intent was to get sex, I still have a connection with her, because any time I see her, my mind going to tell me, you did that girl dirty, right? You can't escape it. So the stress factor is that. No, that is going to, each time I see this young lady, my pressure going to go up. Even if it's 1 point, it's got to go up, because the lie is going to deal with me and bring stress. And I said one thing, stress is the worst thing that can happen to you, right? So is it any different than the concept of stress in terms of, let's take 2 types of stress. Here is a beam, and here is the column. But here is a beam, here is a wall, and here is a beam coming out this wall. Okay. If we put a load here, right, tend to go through, we're going to have this in a moment, the bending moment. The height, the maximum point and the minimum point. But this can be different, isn't it? This can do this. The stress is going to reverse itself because it got nothing to hold the end. Right? Okay. But you still have the same action happening. Now, is there a little stress when I leave my child with the woman, abandon it and don't talk to it? That's a tension. When I go with the woman and just take her body with no intent of doing right and then go away, I get this. It's fluctuating. Here I get the bigger damage when I leave the child, because that's impelling. The load is impelling. The load here is fluctuating. I could dance around. I could justify, I could do it. Oh, well, she didn't get pregnant, so what? See? Here I can't say she is pregnant. Bring me back to my mental responsibility of this. Huh? And bring me back to what's coming out of me. That it is not down here, alone involved, but here. I am connected to a child. And just like connection to the child, like my father makes the connection with my mother and bring me out, I got the connection. So the idea here continues back here, and the idea is no different than the idea here. If this is placed in stress, it will break when it meets its ultimate limit, its elasticity. This will break equally. It tends to shear. It will tend to shear here quicker. But if it doesn't shear here and the load is here, it bends less, but it reverses the stress. But eventually, it's going to break or shear. So does it matter if it's shear, break here, or it's break here, it's broken. And that's the difference. That's what we are saying, is that the mathematics is no different than a human theosophical feelings.
Ben, I have one question. You had mentioned earlier about Giza being the centroid of the universe, and you found that to be the central areas. Can you elaborate more on that and how that came about?
The ancient brothers in Egypt, in designing their pyramids and the pyramids field, established that the center pyramid, the one in the pyramid, what happened in the pyramid field at Giza, you have a rugged plateau, and the largest of the pyramids, the one of Khufu, is here, and it's 48 stories. Let's say up on the top, 48 stories. 48 stories using 10 foot per floor. If we have a building, this is floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. 10 foot from one floor to the other. Using that, the pyramid is 48 of these, or 480 feet of 48 stories. This would be the one of Khufu, whom the Greeks call Cheops. This will be the one of his Khufu's son, which will be Khafre. Look what happened. Look at the size. Let's take a relationship. You see the chart? 1, 2, 3. 3 lengths of the chart. Let's take 2 lengths of the chart. 1, 2. This is higher than this, but it's not bigger than this. And that would be the one of Khafre, which the Greeks call Chephren. Chephren. And this is the one of Chephren's son, Menkaure, whom the Greeks call Mycerinus. Menkaure, Mycerinus. Now, this is the tallest, but because the land is highest here, the smaller pyramid look taller, but in fact it's smaller. Okay. But these are only 3 of the major pyramids that's left. There were 16 pyramids here. 3 of the major ones and 3 of the small ones, the ones of the queens, for each of these pyramids still remain. But if you notice, the ancient brothers equally put something here. They put something else. We look at in front. Let's make a projection of it. Equally here, they put something else. Now, this is the head of a human being. This is the body of a lion. Here you walk to an altar. Back of the altar, you have a stela with the words of printed on it. this is equally him. It's centered on the center pyramid. And the brother said, this point is equal to this point, so that this is here. The pyramid for this pyramid is here. And that's what I said, this pyramid. It's their theory, and nobody has ever been able to take an instrument and disprove it. All the instruments they take and put there, it turns to true north, and so that it is still held that that's the center of the earth. But of course they didn't do it by wishful thinking, they did it by mathematical calculations, by religion.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions, let's give the brother a round of applause to do it.
Where you are and where we're coming from. You're here in the United States, and we are coming to Africa. So we're going to fly from there. In this case, July, you're going to fly here to France and Paris. Then you fly from over to the Alps and so forth. You come down around Italy and Athens, Italy and Greece, and then you come into Cairo. And there we land and transfer, and we stay at a hotel right by the airport. Then, next. Here is the Nile. That's the Egyptian Nile. That's from the northern border of Sudan at Abu Simbel and comes all the way out to the Mediterranean. In ancient times it was called the Great Sea. We would be here. Carol, there should be a light in the box, a pointer light. Thank you. That's working. All right, that's working. Now, this is Egypt here. And by the way, the Sinai is not in Asia. The Sinai is a part of Egypt. And the last time I saw Egypt, it was in Africa. But this is not a point. Trust me. So, the water you see here, the soil was not a natural. It was dug. It began with the Khalid Ismail, and so the French completed it, the British took it away, and now it's back in the hands of the Egyptians. So this here all is Egypt. Egypt in the north is bordered by the Mediterranean, which would be the Great Sea, and the east is bordered by the Red Sea. To the south is Sudan, and to its west is Libya. Next. Here you have a lot. Here's Sinai. Here is the border. There is the Gulf of Aqaba. Here is the Sinai Peninsula. Here's the Suez Canal, Red Sea. And here is Egypt. Come down. This is Libya. Come down. This is Sudan. Come down. And Red Sea. Okay. We will be coming along the Nile. The Nile. That's our, we will travel along the Nile next year. Next. Okay, here is a large part of it, and you could see this is where Sudan and Egypt meet there, the border, and we will come into Cairo. We stayed at the one night, and the next morning we'll take the first flight down. The first flight leave around 5 or 6 o'clock, and provided that we don't have a dust down or something like that, you will arrive, because it's traveling Egypt here, you arrive early in the afternoon, and you will be going by the hotel about 3 o'clock to catch that plane, because you have to go through, and security is tight. They make Upper Egypt, around the Luxor area, which was originally called Waset. When the Greeks came, they changed the name to Thebes. When the Arabs came, they changed the name to Luxor, which is presently used. He came there. He fought with King Scorpion from the north. They fought where Memphis is. The original name for Memphis was Memnefa. Now, it is called Memphis. The war took place there. Here is Nama smiting his enemy. Here is Nama and his family. And these are leopards, the old type animals, and of course the elephant. This here is the stone that symbolized the beginning of the dynastic period. So you're looking at Pharaoh Mena, M-E-N-A or M-A-R-N-E-R. Herodotus, the Greek, when writing about Egypt, called him Menes, M-E-N-E-S. Next. You could get these to buy in plaster at the museum, plaster copies of it, at the same time. This map I show you, you can find in the Green Book and many others, show you where we're going. The next morning, we fly down to Aswan. Sometimes we may be lucky to fly directly down to Abu Simbel, where we will start our first examination of the site. We are going to stay in a place called Aswan, but if we stop at Aswan, then we will go in to our hotel. We're going to the cataract, the hotel, the new cataract, which is now owned, operated by the new chain from Luxor. We're going to be operating that way. So we will go there. But we go down to Abu Simbel. We fly down to a small airport here. We'll be using the smaller planes, smaller jets, 737s, etc. We will come down here. This was when? This was the Nile, before the built dam. Since they built the new high dam has made this water become a lake. I had the pleasure of being able to see it when it was still the Nile there before it becomes the lake. The lake runs as far as 35 miles into Sudan. So that this water, here is the monument here. Here it is. This water has now come all the way here. They had to take this here. These are two temples. The world's largest rock-hewn temples. They came in and cut these temples out, and they had to cut these temples in pieces, 1,000 pieces, move them back this way and up, creating the same effect, because when the water flooded the temples there, most of them went down, except this largest one, the one of Dendur at the museum, and 5 others in different parts of Europe. And we will see this temple as relocated. So you'll get an opportunity to see it. This is called the Temple of Ramesses II. The Pharaoh Ramesses II ruled Egypt from 1298 to 1232. The number is not wrong. You are talking about before the Common Era, and the number comes in the opposite direction than after the Common Era. Now, and we will go to his father's temple, which will be Setai 1, when we go to Abydos. Next. Now, where you saw that temple, the old temple was here. This is an engineering landmark to remind you where the temple was. This water here was less. It was before and back. But when they built a new dam and the water backed up, it created this lake. Over there is Sudan. This side is Egypt. Here are the 2 temples. Now, this is the temple. It should have been turned around by the side. This is the temple of Ramesses II. And now the beard, he didn't have a beard. That showed death. All pharaohs, when they're dead, they're shown with a beard. It's called the Ptah or the Osiris beard. God Ptah, P-T-A-H, or God Asaru, which they call Osiris. Next. Now, in the middle, focus your mind back. When you saw the temple, you saw the small statue in this. This is the statue of God Ra-Horakhti. R-A-H-O-R-A-C-H-T-Y. Ra-Horakhti. It is Ra, God Ra, in one of the forms in which God Ra appears. That is the Ra side of the sun, and that is the falcon shown as God Ra-Horakhti. Next. Now, on the side of the buttress, to show you the type of education we have, these are called Semitic captives of Ramesses II. Next. These are called Negro slaves of Ramesses. Now, go back. Back one. This is, when you go into the temple, this is on the left side. Next. The other one is on the right side. It's the same thing, but one is called a captive and one is called a slave. Why? It's just like when an African hold a lance, it's a spear. If a European hold the same lance, it's a lance. Next. Next. Now, we inside this temple. These columns, these are statues of Ramesses II. They appear to be columns, but they carry no load. It was just the design because it was monolithic that cut it out. But today, it does carry a load because it has been cut up and rebuilt. But this is called hypostyle hall. The word hypostyle means a hall of columns. And then you go down the hypostyle hall and you go into the Holy of Holies. We don't go into the Holy of Holies, but if you want, nobody can stop you. But we think that we need to pay respect. I don't think you walk into an old synagogue or old church and walk in the Holy of Holies. Then why go to here and walk in the Holy of Holies when this is the mother of all religions? This is the mother of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all came from here. Now we get closer to that. Next. This is in the Holy of Holies. And that is the Trinity. You have the Trinity and Ramesses II. Goddess Mut, her son, God Kumsu, or Chums, and her husband, God, anybody? Amun. In various places they have trinities, but the Trinity here is the God the Father, Amun, Goddess, the Mother God, Mut, don't mix her up with Nut. There's Nut and there's Mut. And the Son, Kunsu, or Chums, C-H-O-N-S. And then Ramesses II sitting equally there. And this was the altar. Here there used to be, in February and in December, when the sun came up, it would shine right there on that table and hit the metal made of silver and gold. And it would shine and light up the entire place. When they replaced it with the most modern geodetic surveying equipment, they were 1/2 degree off. And the sun doesn't hit direct center anymore. Next. Now we've gone down to the temple here. You're seeing Nefertari, Ramesses II, and Goddess Heru, which is you call Hathor. Next. You see members of Al-Qibla and the first wall going into the temple. Next. Inside the temple, you can read the types. Here is a struggle going on with Ramesses fighting. This is the Battle of Kadesh. And next. Okay, here again you see Ramesses. Now you said this is his wife's temple. And by the way, you have been taught in school that Taj Mahal is the only and first place that a head of state ever built for his wife. That isn't true at all. Taj Mahal is in the 16th century of the Common Era. Ramesses was the 19th dynasty, and it was 1298 to 1232, 1000 and it's more than 1800 years before the Madhara built his temple in India. But then that's the kind of education we had. Now, these are called apparent columns, wherever you see them, and in four sides. It is the African head of a woman and the ears of a cow. You can also see her, other than as a woman, you see her as a cow. For those of you who are religious, you remember this in your Bible, your Quran, and your Torah. They said Abraham worshipped the golden calf. And before he converted, they said Moses did it and Aaron did it. Remember that fight up on the mountain? Moses went down and Aaron took over. They built again a golden calf. But it wasn't a golden calf. They knew what it was. The writer just didn't put a name. It was Goddess Hathor from Egypt. Next. Here you see her in a much better form. Next. There she's been crowned. You got Goddess Isis and her sister, Goddess Nephthys, twin sisters, crowning Nephthys. Now we have flown back, we're back in Aswan, and now we leave our hotel and we're going to visit Aswan. We are now on the runway of the dam, the new high dam. There is an old dam which we will go over, started by the British, completed by the British, and that's about 3 miles farther downstream. Up in Egypt, or the whole Nile, is south. Down is north. That's the geography. Now, this is on top of the roadway, and this here is the center wall. That over the parapet wall south. This is the parapet wall at the north. Okay. This is the reinforced concrete monument built by the Russians and Egyptians in memory of the cooperation for the building of the dam between Russia and Egypt. There's a long story about America's part and this and so forth, when it started with NASA, completed with that and so forth. But we don't have time for it here. We'll hear from go over there. Next. This is the spillway, and the water comes in the dam from the south. It comes out of the dam after going through the turbines. The turbines take that water, and for the water makes electricity for the whole of Egypt. And this, when it comes out here, it continues down to the rest of Egypt. Next. Now, we have left there, and we have gone to Colombo. We could have stayed, and I think there may be a shot there. We could have stayed and go and see the unfinished obelisk. The unfinished obelisk would have been the tallest obelisk in the world. The obelisk would have been about 75 feet. When you go, you're going to see how they were able to take one piece of stone monolithically. And Aswan is the only place there's marble in Egypt. They would cut it there, and in inundation period, the flood, they would carry it in the barges all the way to 250 miles and set it up. We don't get another thing next. That was Komombo. We're going up there to what's called the pylon, the gate. Now, this is Komombo from the wall. This is Nile. The only water you will see in your travels after you arrive in Egypt is going to be the Nile, or canals leading off the Nile. There is another, some other water, but you're not going there at these waters. And there's a big lake, but you're not going to that lake either. So all the water you're going to see is the Nile and canals off the Nile. Next. Here you see it from the front. As we come into the palace and watching it next. Now, for those of you who are Christians, I hate to disappoint you, but John the Baptist did not baptize Jesus, and the first time a man baptized another one. Here, the Pharaoh is being baptized. It's called the purification rite. If you look, you see these little things? They are ants and wasps, W-A-S. A wasp looks like a goat head and a stick. It's the authority of the highest authority of the snake, and the ant, you know what the ant looks like. Judas the Caesar, well, Judas didn't do those things. So he was a turnaround man. That's what you're talking about. That's him. So when the Greeks came, the Greeks inserted themselves into the religion, and he had his